welcome on into another episode of Getting Wild with Terry and Friends, NHL season preview show edition. And the day has come. We will talk about our first Atlantic team, and that is the Buffalo Sabres. So Tim, everybody has seen before, and especially in the chat, is ready to say his famous line, which I told him he can't say until we get to the futures part of the show. So he's not allowed to say that till later, but obviously Ian, who's been on so many of the shows with us, DJ, who's been on a couple as well, Sabres fan as well. So we are going to get started and talk about a pretty interesting team here in the Sabres. We'll start with addition subtractions, look at what they did in the offseason. Obviously, a lot of subtractions. There is a lot of subtractions, but not many, I don't want to say important pieces, but not many pieces that are drastically going to affect the lineup. A lot of replaceable. You're getting rid of Arundel and Dustin Tokarski.
So a lot of dead weight, you're saying, yeah.
There's a lot of players here that there's some additions by subtractions on this list. Yeah. That's for sure.
It's 99%.
Yeah, so there's some additions and by subtractions here. When you look at the additions themselves, Eric Comrie had a good season or good couple seasons when he played for Winnipeg. So it'll be interesting to see him and Anderson exactly how the goalie matchups work. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's right there as well. So really all three goalies possibly battling for the top spot. We'll have to see. Chase Prisky, that's a defenseman that I'm kind of high on. I've seen he's been highly rated at times and has a lot of potential. Buffalo grabbing him for free is a pretty good move there. Riley Sheehan, Cale Clegg, Ilya Lyubushkin as well. Not any huge additions, not any huge subtractions, but a lot of dead weight out the door and opening room for some young players here in Buffalo. We'll go to Ian first this time. Addition subtractions. What do you think here with the Sabres?
Yeah, I mean, they're all players that weren't going to move the needle for the Buffalo Sabres this season that are moving on their way out. Johnny Boychuk, of course, just damaged goods at this point with all the injuries, and he's an older player now. Jankowski's just a depth center. Cody Eakin's a good, hard-working player. I kind of think they'll miss him a little bit, but it's not like it's going to be the be-all, end-all without him. Farmer in the Dell, peace out, dude. Yeah, you won't be missed too much. Mark Pezic is just a depth defenseman. Drake Kajula, they've got enough offense. We saw that from the Sabres down the stretch. Scoring goals wasn't a problem for them. So, and again, a replaceable part. Miller and Butcher, middling defenseman. Tokarski, depth goalie. You got enough that'll be compete. Hauser, the same thing. John Hayden, hardworking, tenacious, physical, drops the gloves every now and then, but, you can live without John Hayden as well. So nothing that's going to move the needle subtractions-wise. I liked Eric Comrie's game in a backup role for Connor Hellebuck last year with the Winnipeg Jets. Numbers were pretty solid. Even his advanced numbers look pretty good. You mentioned there's some upside with Chase Prisky. Hasn't always panned out for him so far at the NHL level or getting to this level consistently, but I think there's some upside there if the Sabres can bring him along. And, of course, I think Don Granato's done a nice job here in a short time since taking over. Cale Clegg, is someone that could become a more regular part of the blue line moving forward. I like the Ilya Lyubushkin move because the Sabres did get pushed around a little bit at times last year. He brings that physical sandpaper element. He'll knock you down in front of the net. He'll clear people from in front of the net so they don't get to those loose pucks and rebounds. You need guys like that. Riley Sheehan is a veteran center that'll help this team experience-wise. So no complaints at all. I think solid enough offseason for the Buffalo Sabres. Again, nothing that's superstar additions to the team by any stretch, but little additions here and there that'll help from a depth perspective and make this team just a little bit better.
Yeah, I don't have, and I haven't when I've been doing the videos, prospects that are coming into teams on the addition side because they're already with the team. I haven't added them as additions, but there are teams like Buffalo here who's going to have a big prospect coming this year, so that'll be addition as well.
Mr. Power, yeah,
exactly. DJ, what do you think about the Buffalo's offseason addition subtractions?
Okay, wait, you got me now?
You're good.
Yep.
Sorry, I clicked on mute and it froze. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I'm not even going to get into the nitty gritty on all these guys because there's 2 useful players here and the rest are more or less you hope they don't play because of injuries. Eric Comrie is the first. It's the obvious. Like if you're making the bull case on the Sabres, if you're making the Sabres have a chance this year case, it's Eric Comrie is legitimately everything he was in Winnipeg, and the Sabres are better defensively than Winnipeg, and that can propel them into relevancy. I'm not sure if I buy it. Like such a small sample size, it's hard to say, but he was legitimately just under Igor Shesterkin and high danger saves above expected. You think that that's repeatable as long as he can handle the workload. I don't normally get too in the weeds on workload management with goalies because they play a billion games all their career and then they get to the NHL and it takes them a little time. But I think he's fine. He won some big games for Canada back in the day. He won some big games for Winnipeg, who was legitimately a dumpster fire defensively. So I think he's totally fine to say, like, I'm fine drafting him in fantasy. I'm totally fine drafting him in best puck at the end of the 16th round because I think the Sabres are more and more going to start committing to him as a 45 game starter, 50 game starter. Lyubushkin is just there to play with power. I think that he's going to be more or less useless in your fantasy circles and your DFS, etc. But he will hit. He loves to hit. He will fight, and you have him in power on the point. That's got to be one of the tallest defensive pairings in the NHL. So just intimidating to look at. But subtraction wise, I don't think we lose anyone of any value. I would say Eakin is actually, I don't like him at all. So I would say that this entire, other than Colin Miller, who I think at least has some ability on the point to like move the puck, I think it's pretty much a complete L. And all of them, they go to be depth players somewhere else and they're useless. So it's way more about the prospects, which I think we're going to touch on next. I think the Sabres got better this year, and it's just like, is the goaltending going to get there? And are the prospects, is any of these prospects actually going to take a monumental leap forward? If not, it's not going to be a great team in Buffalo that I'll be at all the time. I'll be at probably 20 games at home, and I'll be watching these prospects hopefully at least get better. But if they do somehow have Elias Pettersson type of situation on their hands, like, who knows? But that's pretty much where it's at. But we'll get to that at the end, and I'll pass it to my fellow Sabres fan, Tim. Popcorn 2,
Perfect.
Tim.
There you go.
Yeah, I feel like this is more of an addition by subtraction type of deal, like you guys mentioned. Just a bunch of players that I kind of looked through their stats and like, a couple of them played a couple of games, nothing too crazy. We get rid of the meme of Aaron Dell for Vezina, but other than that, I'm more interested to see how some of our prospects are going to do. Because with the goalie situation, Comrie could be good, but I want to see what Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen could do. Obviously, we need to see more defense than what we did last year. Obviously, we kind of saw a little bit of offense, mostly from that front line, but defense is going to be a big thing, and a couple additions on defense. They're more of depth pieces, but I'm excited to see how this team kind of moves in a different direction from going apart from a lot of these players.
All right. Next, we'll go and look at prospects and upcoming free agents to see what Buffalo has upcoming here. Start with prospects. Obviously, the guy we've already talked about, Owen Power, will be making his debut this year, unless anything drastic happens. He's slated to make the team this year. Matthew Savoy, Devin Levy, Noah Ostlund, Isaac Rosen, Yuri Kulik, and Ryan Johnson, and others. There's other prospects as well. Buffalo is lucky to be one of those teams that has been building their prospect pool. They are the team in the NHL with the longest playoff drought. Sorry to remind you, TJ, and Tim, and even Ian. But the good thing is the last few years, Buffalo has been doing good in the drafting when it comes to drafting. So really that top guy, Owen Power, that's the guy who's going to make the biggest addition this year. Devin Levy, if he turns out to be something good, if Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen turns out to be good, then Buffalo could have a really good young goaltenders over the next future. So pretty good things to say about the prospect pool in Buffalo. When we look at upcoming free agents, Kyle Okposo, his $6 million will be coming off the books for Buffalo there. Gergensons and Hinostroza. Lawrence, guessing it's Pilat, but I'm not exactly sure. Craig Anderson will probably retire, I would assume, but we'll never know. Or we won't know until we get to that point, I guess. The biggest name here will probably be Dylan Cousins. Rasmus Asplund, the 4 restricted free agents. I'm not sure Anders Bork, what his future will hold with Buffalo, but the bottom 3 guys, I'm sure Buffalo will be looking to re-sign those RFAs. And the UFAs, potentially all 5 of them could be on their way out, in my opinion. DJ, we'll go to you first this time. Prospects, upcoming free agents, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of put the majority of guys that are not going to be in Buffalo this year. I think probably at all. Maybe Matt Savoy gets the nod after he go. I think he'll go back and play one more year, and I believe the Kootenay Ice before he jumps over. Devin Levi is going back to college. So is Ryan Johnson. Levi is kind of the guy that it's like. Again, I wasn't really that mad about it. I think a lot of Sabres fans were like, this guy's ready. Let's get him in the NHL. I was more of like, we're going to force this kid in to the same situation as Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Why don't we? I think it's actually better to work out this way where he literally will be the best player in college hockey. Can he propel a team that's average to a Final Four, Frozen Four type of situation and get this amazing experience? We'll see if he can jump over, but he's the goalie of the future for the Sabres at this point. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's kind of dangerously tipping into irrelevancy, at least in my eyes. Like if he doesn't figure it out this year, if he can't put a really good year together in the AHL, I'm worried that we broke him before he was ready to go. He had some injuries that plagued him from the the Quebec Major Junior League, and it came over and it just never really got there. So I am concerned about him. Kulich is the guy that I'm the highest on, that probably is the most unknown. I think he actually will be in Rochester this year. And I think that he is the secret sauce that we've been missing as far as like a really, really good dynamic 2-way power forward center. But other than that, I mean, the guys that I'm the most excited for, you already mentioned Owen Power. I don't need to talk about the number 1 overall pick from 2 years ago. It's JJ Peterka for me that I think is like legitimately the guy that might jump off the page this year. That went from a guy that really no one's talking about, no one knows about, to being incredibly relevant. I think that he's just one of the more skilled young players that are going to join the league this year. And I think that if you're not looking at JJ Peterka, who I believe will probably be on the 3rd line as a potential future, especially if you have deep dynasty leagues, et cetera, I think you're probably doing it wrong. He is the guy that I think is going to get the most hype. And I think we all know about Jack Quinn, and he's kind of the guy that I think they're going to start to replace Olofsson with, but I think JJ Peterka is kind of the hidden gem on this team. So if he can turn it around, if he can just continue his dominance in the AHL and bring it into the NHL, I'm going to be really, really happy with this team's ability to score, which has just been lacking for a decade.
All right. Yeah, the list of prospects I got off. I think I look at a couple different sites. So obviously, I don't know all. Like,
well, it's not. Yeah, I mean, well, once they
it's just what the list says.
It depends because he's like been on a professional contract for multiple years. So some sites don't count him anymore, but he's not played in the NHL. So it's like, I don't know. I just think he's like the unknown guy that no one like. There's always those guys that come out of nowhere. I mean, like Brian Rust might be another example. Not maybe not the same player, but like kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, he was college hockey, so a little more known in the States, but like. I think this guy's going to really jump off the page this year.
What do you think about upcoming free agents?
Who
do you want to re-sign?
I think Okposo is going to retire for sure. Hinostroza is probably gone. Pilot. I mean, Lawrence Pilot is kind of the really interesting guy that I think that exists. He's been in the organization for a while. It didn't work out last time. He goes back to Russia, dominates again overseas. I think that there's a ton of offensive upside in that guy, but I think we're going to see it in Rochester and maybe come up. And then I'm really high on Samuelsson and Cousins going to come back. That's not a big concern. But I'm really high on Samuelsson. That's like the one guy I think that like he unlocked Dahlin last year. Like that's the guy that I think Dahlin always needed to be with. And I think it opened the coach's eyes to Dahlin can play both sides. And when they switched Dahlin's side, he became a way better offensive player. So I think that really is what benefited that. I don't even know if Samuelsson is as good as I think he is, or if Dahlin gets so much better because of switching sides and having a good defensive partner that it just sort of made them both look so good. But I think that that's going to be key to have a guy, and it's kind of like the fourth guy on Colorado's defense, where it's like he really matters, but like you have these three superstars. Like you're not going to notice Samuelson a ton, and that's a good thing. But I think that you need that kind of guy to pair with Dahlin.
Awesome. Tim, prospects, upcoming free agents. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Owen Power. I remember we watched him a bunch. Nick kind of introduced me when it was the Canada Youth League or whatever it was. The whatever, he scored like 4 goals in a game, and we were doing shots for each goal that he did or whatever. And I remember watching him a lot there. But this team's going to be a young team, so prospects will come up and down. We'll see how a bunch of these guys come out. The big guy obviously is Owen Power, but we kind of saw him a little bit last year. He kind of dipped his toe in the NHL. That was kind of cool to see. As for free agents, get the guys that are going to be important. Cousins, probably the bottom 3 guys on the restricted free agent chart is going to be the important ones. Craig Anderson, I'm pretty sure is about 70 years old at this point. I'm surprised he's still playing. A bunch of these guys are probably going to retire or leave out altogether. But this is going to be a young team, which means you're going to see a bunch of prospects. So depends on how the prospects do. We'll kind of shoot the Sabres either towards a possible wild card spot or down the list. So we'll see how the prospects come out.
All right. Yeah, I think the Sabres, if there's one more bad year for the Sabres, this is a really good draft. I think if the Sabres one more bad year, I think it would be worth it. But hey, it's not up to me or my opinion. But Ian, what do you think here? Prospects and free agents.
Slam dunk top 5 prospect pool currently in the National Hockey League. There's no question about that with the Buffalo Sabres. And DJ mentioned Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, slow development, hasn't really warmed to the task just yet. And you look at the prospect pool that currently constitutes for Buffalo right now: forwards, defense, goaltending. He'd better get his ass in gear. That alarm clock better go off for him pretty soon, because you've got Topias Leinonen, Eric Portillo, Devin Levi, as DJ mentioned, all waiting in the wings, and those are just goalie prospects. On defense, I already talked about how Rasmus Dahlin, what a bounce back year for him. We'd like to hope that's the Rasmus Dahlin we're going to get moving forward. Owen Power is going to be a full-time NHLer on that blue line this year. You've got Ryan Johnson. You've got Mats Lindgren. You've got a lot of prospects just waiting to join this team to formulate that blue line. You've already got Peyton Krebs and the Jack Eichel deal. You've got Tage Thompson, who had a breakout season last year. And got paid handsomely as a result. Dylan Cousins, who I think, he's just scratching the surface of what he could be. And I think his give a damn level last year for the Buffalo Sabres, that's what I loved about Dylan Cousins. When things weren't going well, that guy is giving you 110% effort when you're down 5-1 in a game. That's the stuff that I noticed from Dylan Cousins. So you've got all these forwards that have stepped to the fore. And then in the pipeline, still waiting on the wings, you got Yuri Kulich, Noah Ostlund, Matt Savoy, Jack Quinn, JJ Peterka, who DJ said he has high hopes for, and I do as well. It's just loaded, really. Forwards, defense, and goaltending. They're set for a long time to be a very, very good hockey team for a long time. It's a great prospect group, no question about that. As far as the free agents are concerned, I thought for sure when unrestricted free agency time came next year, they'd be saying adios Kyle Okposo, but he's coming off actually a surprisingly terrific year and one of his best years in a long time. Now the question is he still going to want to retire at the end of this year as a potential? Can he really sustain what he did last year? I mean, you look at Kyle Okposo before last year, he had a season in 2020 in 35 games. He had just 13 points, 52 games the year before that, 19 points. And all of a sudden last year, 74 games, 21 goals, 45 points. Where did that come from all of a sudden? Turning back the clock a little bit was Kyle Okposo. So this year will judge that. Does he play well enough that the Sabres want him? Does he feel his game's at a high enough level that he wants to keep playing after this year? There's a lot of debate that's going to be going on internally with that. Zemgus Girgenssen's been disappointed, at least offensively he has been. There's no question about that. So I'm wondering if Zemgus Girgenssen's even going to be back next year. Vinny Hinostroza is a depth forward. You might part ways. Craig Anderson's done after that. I cannot envision Buffalo having him. He might retire for all we know as well after this year as well. Anders Bjork, Cousins. Cousins is the key you want to focus in on, and Samuelson as well to a second extent as well in terms of the restricted free agents. But there's definitely going to be a lot of work to be done for Kevin Adams in the offseason next year. And look, Kevin Adams has had some shade thrown at him at times for what he's done here in Buffalo, but he's getting settled now, and I find he's getting more comfortable in his role. He's relying on his management team. He's relying on the scouts who have done a phenomenal job. And again, I say the GM gets a lot of the credit for the drafting, but scouts deserve the credit. Scouts are out there looking at these players. Scouts are out there watching the tape, going to games, flying here, there, and everywhere to watch these players in person. They deserve the credit for building up this prospect pool for the Sabres. But Kevin Adams getting comfortable. It can't be any worse than the Botterill disaster. And he's starting to settle in right now as GM, and things are looking up for this team. And the prospect pool, like I said, one of the best in the NHL.
For sure. Next up, we'll take a look at the possible lineup. So the possible lineup that we may see for the Sabres. This is according to Cap Friendly. So Skinner, Thompson, and Olofsson on the top line. I think we would probably see Tuck. And that line was really good last year. Skinner, Thompson, and Tuck. Definitely cashed some player props on them. Olofsson, maybe Olofsson, Middlestat, and Krebs. I would maybe give Cousins a look ahead of Middlestat. Middlestat's kind of been disappointing so far in his NHL career. If I was coach, I'd probably have Cousins above him. Cousins, Krebs, and Olofsson. Then you could have Middlestat, Quinn, and Asplund, Hinostroza, Gergensen, Okposo. So like Ian said, Okposo had a big year, but projected to be on the fourth line. So if that's the case, it'll be tough for him to really get to keep that performance up with not a lot of minutes, potentially. Dahlian and Samuelson, Power and Yoki Haru, Bryson and Labushkin, Fitzgerald as an extra, Anderson, Comrie, and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. A young lineup, as Tim said. It is going to be overall a young lineup. Maybe if you take Anderson and Okposo out, then it's a really young lineup. But a lot of young players, and we'll have to see how things go for Buffalo. But I think they're going to be a sneaky team this year, profitability-wise. They're definitely going to have their spots as underdogs to bet them for sure. Ian, we'll go to you first this time. Possible lineup for the Sabres. What do you think?
Yeah, it's I like the top six. I mean, I really do. And keep in mind, the one guy to really watch out for, because there was a time there he was streaking and playing great in that two center spot, the Casey Middlestat. And then he got bombarded with some injuries and absences, and it kind of stunted his growth, if you will, and kind of was inconsistent, mediocre. They get Casey Middlestat full-time, consistent with this team. It's going to really help, especially in that top six. They're going to ask a lot of him. They could have him in that second center spot. It's very possible. That's where he ends up slotting in. So what are you going to get from him? I'm not worried about Thompson. He's going to be a good one. I don't worry about him getting complacent after getting the money. I think he'll be good. No question. Jeff Skinner, he was getting a lot of people criticizing me too a couple years ago, talking about Skinner and where's his offense gone? Not the same guy we saw in Kakalaki, but last year, it's a bounce back year, 63 points, 80 games, 33 goals. You can't ask for much more than that. Victor Olofsson's a guy that's gotten criticism in the past because they say this guy only shows up on the power play. He's only a power play guy for us. He only finds his way to contribute offensively on the power play. Well, last year, he had 12 power play points. He had 49 points overall. I would say his 5-on-5 even strength game improved significantly. No question about that. I think we can put that to bed now. Victor Olofsson's only a guy that shows up on the power play. His 5-on-5 even strength game significantly got better last season for the Buffalo Sabres. So I think that top six is going to be very good for them, no question. Dylan Cousins, I love the guy's work ethic. I talked about that. You got even some offense from Rasmus Asplund last year. See if that continues. Can Okposo duplicate the offensive resurgence of a season ago? Going to be interesting as well. And you've got some, sandpaper type forwards too, and Hinostroza, Sheahan, Brett Murray going to be battling for ice time. Defense, we talked about it. Samuelson, Dahlian, Power, the big three. Jacob Bryson showed little flashes, and then it kind of petered out. When he first got called up last year, Jacob Bryson, actually played pretty well, and then things kind of fizzled after that. So over an 82-game season, assuming he makes this blue line, which I assume he will, Can he be more consistent? Labushkin's a nice ad. They need a little muscle, sandpaper, physicality on the back end. They get that from him. Pressure's on Henry Jokiharju, in my opinion, here. You got to play well, my friend, because you got a ton of defensive prospects waiting in the wings here to take your spot if you're not ready to step to the plate this year, no question. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they unfold. The thing is, the concern is, while we know Samuelson's talent, lots of upside, high ceiling. Dahlin finally had a bounce back year, his best year, high ceiling. Power, sky's the limit for him. You're still putting 25 minutes, 20 minutes of ice time every night on these young kids. Can they handle it? Can they handle that for an 82-game season? That's the big question. Talent's there, the ability's there, the high ceiling to be a great NHLer is there for these guys. Can they do it night in and night out? If they can this year, Buffalo's a contender to make the playoffs. They absolutely are. If they can't, then it's going to be tough because goaltending's questionable. That's the one area I'm pissing my pants about with the Sabres team. Craig Anderson's a 40-year-old goalie. I don't have the utmost faith. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's not showing you consistency at the NHL level. I think Eric Comrie was excellent last year, but if he's going to start more games for you this year in Buffalo compared to Winnipeg, can he deliver the goods? There's legit questions all around the goaltending, and you're not ready for Devin Levi. You're not ready for some of the other goalie prospects yet. So it's going to have to fall on one of these three guys to really play well in net, which is the biggest question mark in my mind for Buffalo right now.
Yeah, for sure. Tim, possible lineup? What do you think here?
Yeah, one of the things that we're not going to have to worry about this year is that top line, barring hopefully we don't see injuries. Skinner, Thompson, and it should be Tuck. Because we saw a lot from them last year, and if most of your offense is going to come from them, fine, but they got to stay healthy. Krebs, I'm excited to see because we kind of saw like a half a season from him last year. He put up some points with us. I'm excited to see what you can get from him. Cousins, definitely a good piece in there. Dahlin, I'm really liking. I think Nick said he's going to have a ticket for him to win the Norris. So that it could be a big upgrade. Not a big upgrade, but a solid piece on your defense. Obviously, we've mentioned Owen Power time in, time out. As long as he has a solid year, this defense can get a lot stronger. That's where they're going to need to get stronger. We saw they were able to score last year. The question is, will you be able to slow down the opposite side? And if we can get some good defenders and maybe not have as much go to the net where we could have a little bit of questionable. I am hoping that Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has a lot better of a year. And stays on the ice and be able to, not go out with an injury like he did last year. Craig Anderson, I'm hoping sees very little because I'm hoping we see more from Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Eric Comrie. With hopefully those are the top two guys and Anderson in there for injuries or if they really need him. Just because he's getting up there and I'd much rather lose with Comrie and Luukkonen just to get them a little bit more experience. I definitely think could be a good goalie duo as long as the defense steps up. So I am hopeful with this for this year. We'll just see if they're able to slow down teams with their defense.
All right. DJ, what do you think? Possible lineup?
Yeah, I mean, first off, the Casey Mittelstadt and not Middlestad, it's bothering me. I'm sorry, I had to say at the start. It was blowing my mind.
Well, come on,
it's
Terry.
Mitt. I couldn't go forward. I couldn't go forward without it. You need to know how to spell every Sabres player.
It sounds like Middlestad when you say it, but it's not spelled that way. No.
It just
I was typing them in earlier in a bit of a rush. I apologize. But.
It's okay. I couldn't move forward. I mean, this lineup is pretty much about where I have it. I actually think that they're going to start with Tuck, Quinn, and Krebs personally, just because I think they really want to showcase Quinn and give him the right line mates to see if he can produce early. That's just a personal opinion I kind of hope for, because I think that Olofsson with Tage and Skinner seems weird. I actually think that the way that Tage and Skinner can skate with the puck will open up Olofsson just as much as they don't need Tuck to do that. I just think that Tage is finally finding himself as a guy that can move to the neutral zone. So I'm fine with this. I just personally, like I'm saying, would put Quinn on the wing, Krebs center, Tuck on the other side with line two. Other than that, this is more or less what I like. I have Peterka in over Hinostroza as well, and as more of a third line role where I think Aspen will find himself on the fourth line, which is where he belongs, and he's very, very good. That's the thing about the Sabres team is all these prospects coming through, they're going to have depth. Like, it's not going to be a Seattle Kraken type of team where you're like, oh man, there's absolutely no depth. Like, they're going to have depth. It's just they do not have any elite talent other than arguably Tage Thompson right now. And like Tuck is somewhat on that level, maybe. And then other than that, it's a ton of question marks. Defense, I just would move Labushkin. I just swap Jokiharju, Labushkin myself because I think that's what they want to do, but we'll see. And to start the year, I do think it'll be Comrie as the 1A. Anderson will probably see more starts off the cuff just to get things going. And then I think they'll fizzle down. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, general manager, Kevin Adams said that like they want to give him the maximum amount of starts, and they believe that's in Rochester. So it's like if he excels to start the year, I think that we'll see what Tim wants and him come up, and then Anderson kind of just go away, which would be the ideal best case scenario, right? That's like Sabres are in a position to fight. I worry that this team is going to do just enough to make all the fans and everyone feel good, but not nearly enough to make the playoffs. And they're going to be like 8 points out. And we're all going to be like, oh, what a great fun year. We totally screwed our draft chances and we just were like middling. And like, that's probably what it's going to be. But there is a bowl case here. There is a case where I think this team actually puts together something special, but I'm just not someone that can bet on vibes and say that like, oh, well, going this year, we got a new team that's kind of all coming together, and you hear all this, the brotherhood kind of being built on this team, and you can tell that there is something special brewing. But are they actually going to contend with Florida, Toronto, Boston, who is still right there, and a lot of people are still high on? I said Toronto, I think. Who did I miss?
Tampa, Florida,
Tampa. That was the one I didn't say. Like, okay, and then on top of that, Ottawa got infinitely better. It's like,
so
okay,
did Detroit.
And Detroit. Yeah, I mean, I think.
And who would you rather have, Ville Husso or one of Buffalo's goalies right now?
I mean, that's the thing. It's like it's so hard to see the avenue and the path for them to like win the Atlantic or not even win the Atlantic, just win enough in the Atlantic to get there. And that's why it's like, man, this team is going to be fun. I'm excited for the first time in a long time, but I don't know if there's a lineup combination you could put together that actually competes with that top four, let alone the rest of the division. That is, and honestly, I mean, Montreal's bad, but like, are they that much worse than the Sabres? Like, I feel like Montreal fans are doing the same thing we're doing. They're like, oh man, like look at this. Cole Caulfield's gotten better at the end of last year. Like all these guys are, we got Kirby Dach. What if Kirby Dach is really good? And it's like, I don't know, right? Like is Jake Allen better than Comrie? That's honestly, I think, debatable. Like Jake Allen got absolutely peppered. So it's like, who are we actually better than in this division? And there's one team, and even that team, I'm like, are we that much better? So I know the next segment's more about like predictions and everything, so I don't want to give too much away. It's just like, as excited as I get looking at this lineup and this team, it's like, how does it get there? And like, it just probably doesn't. And it's super sad to say, but yeah. You're muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, sorry. As a Sabres fan, we'll head into the last 5 years in the record. But I totally don't blame you for not being too optimistic because of what you've had to go through for 12 or 13 years now.
Really,
I'm not sure the exact, but it's been a long time. We'll just leave it at that. It's been a long time.
Even Rick Jeanneret got fired up with all the nonsense and said, "I'm done. I'm out."
Yeah,
no.
Yeah.
So it's been a while, but we'll take a look here. Buffalo got 75 points last year. Their point total is 77.5. To make the playoffs is plus 600. There's definitely value there if you do think Buffalo has what it takes. To win the division, plus 7,000. No, I won't be betting that. And to win the cup, definitely no. But point total, I think the Sabres, yes, everyone in the division improved. That's the only thing that would, and if the goaltending can get there, I think the Sabres can be a few points better than they were last year. That's all you would need would be 3 points better. I think the Sabres could be around 500. I think it's possible we could see around 500 to make the playoffs. I'm not going to be putting my money on it, but to each person's own. Tim, I know you've been waiting for this. This is your moment. Futures for the Buffalo Sabres. What do you think?
Okay, so I had to, and I'll show it off. I had to. And when I went to Vegas, I made sure I got a Sabres to win the cup ticket. For me, it was 75-1 at South Point, but I had to do it just because it wouldn't be right if I didn't. I only threw $10 on it, but I do think this team goes over their point total. I honestly, if I'm being realistic, I think they have a shot at an 8 seed, but they have to play like almost perfect hockey in order to do that. I do think they have a shot with it because you might see two wild card teams from the Atlantic. Just because the Metro is not going to be as strong as the Atlantic this year. And you could see 5 teams come out of the Atlantic and 3 come out of the Metro. That's the only chance I really see at Buffalo really getting in. It would be exciting to see, but I had to throw it at it. Sabres for the cup, 75-1, but I think they have a shot at a 8 seed at their peak for this year.
All right. Ian, what do you think about the futures in the last 5 years for the Sabres?
Yeah, I'll bite small on the point total, even on the playoffs at plus 600. Do I feel like for sure they're going to make it? Of course not. But, I really like what I saw down the stretch. Maybe you're a prisoner of the moment. Maybe Sabres fans are prisoner of the moment, and they see that strong finish last year where that team actually looked like it was really coming together the last month or two, and think it could be a springboard to this season and a better 82 game, body of work. But then again, Sabres fans also know that could be the complete opposite, turns into a disastrous season all over again. We know a lot of Sabres fans, believe me, are conditioned to think the worst at all times. And you look around the division, this is going to be such a fun Atlantic division, and we haven't been able to say that in years. The top 4 teams are still very good. They're not going anywhere. Toronto, Tampa Bay, Florida, Boston. Boston could step back, and there's questions, and they've got injuries to start the year, of course, which is concerning, but I don't think they'll totally fall off the Bruins necessarily. You've got those 4 teams that are still going to be tough. And then every other team, remember those dregs, the 4 dregs of the division the last several years? They all got better. And in some cases, a lot better. Ottawa, Buffalo, Detroit. Montreal's going to be even better than last year, simply because they can't be any worse. So, you look at this division, top to bottom, it's going to be fun to watch. And the gap between the top 4 and the bottom 4 in this division is shrinking. And it's just now going to be a question of how much is the gap going to close from the Leafs, Panthers, Lightning, Bruins group to the Senators, Sabres, Red Wings, Canadiens group this year in this division. That's going to be the big question. I'm going to just split some hairs here. Ottawa, Buffalo. Ottawa's got Cam Talbot. I'll take him over Buffalo's goaltending. But I think I'll take the Sabre blue line over Ottawa's. I like Shabbat in Ottawa, don't get me wrong, but I've got questions about their depth on defense. Ottawa, I still don't think they're great there. If Owen Power just wows us in his first full year, Dahlin keeps up the resurgence of last year, the Sabres could be pretty good on the blue line to the point where maybe they're slightly better on the back end than Ottawa, whereas Cam Talbot's going to have to face more difficult shots. Maybe the Buffalo blue line will do a better job in front of their goaltender, whoever it is. So that's something you weigh. Detroit's blue line's pretty good too, compared to Ottawa's for sure. Buffalo's even. And of course, they've got Ville Husso. But the counter argument to that is we loved Ville Husso last year. He played great last year. Well, now you're the guy, undisputed. There's no Jordan Binnington behind you. With all due respect to Nedeljkovic coming off a bad year, can he settle and be the guy in goal? We know there was talent there. He showed it last year with St. Louis, but now is the guy in Detroit. And with all due respect to Detroit's blue line, a little worse than what he saw in St. Louis. Can he get the job done? We saw what happened with Nedeljkovic, right? Looked pretty good in Carolina. Goes to play in Detroit, not so good all of a sudden. So, it's basically who's in front of you. That forward group, that blue line, not as strong. And we saw Nedeljkovic struggle with that adjustment. Carolina to Detroit. As much as I love the way Husso played last year, does he struggle with that adjustment? St. Louis to Detroit. So those are still question marks. So there's pathways for Buffalo. There's pathways for them to be the team ahead of Ottawa, the team ahead of Detroit. But there's a lot that's going to have to go right. Okay, Tage Thompson's got to be the bell cow he was down the stretch. The top 6 has got to put the puck in. They've got to get continued development and growth from the bottom 6. This big 3 on the blue line, Dahlin, Samuelson, and Power, they got to show they're the real deal. They're going to be the guys playing all the minutes. They're going to be the guys playing in all situations, playing against the best forward lines from the other team. They're going to have to be those guys that can show they're ready to do it immediately and perform at a high level. That's what it's going to take for Buffalo, and it's going to take one of these goaltenders that we all have questions about stepping up and being at least average, if not above average, in terms of their puck stopping ability in between the pipes. So a lot's got to go right. There are pathways, but I still like it enough for the over point total. A small little dabble on the make the playoffs.
All right. I won't comment on Cam Talbot, but I expect that Ottawa defense is
That's
not
the thing
good.
with Cam Talbot. Cam Talbot's great when he's got a nice, strong blue line, and he's got like a New Jersey Devil blue line from the 90s playing in front of him. Or he's got Anaheim with Pronger, Niedermeyer, and all those great blue liners when they won the Cup 15 years ago. Cam Talbot can thrive in that kind of spot. Can he thrive with this Ottawa blue line in front of him now? It's weaker. It's weaker. And sometimes we've seen him. He needs the table set around him, not a guy that can just steal it with pieces around him that are a little out of whack.
Yeah. DJ, Sabres futures. What do you think here?
I mean, I'm very much against betting on futures that are like very close to the median, because I think tying up your money for an extended period of time for a coin flip, 77.5 is a coin flip. I mean, I have them close to like, I have them right between like 74 and 78, somewhere in that range on points. So I'm going to sit here and like tie up any amount of money for an entire season. I don't do that personally. I think if you're betting on them to make the playoffs, you're essentially betting on a massive amount of injuries plugging our division, plus goaltending just absolutely falling off the cliff for Ottawa, Toronto. But I mean, Boston's kind of the one team that I also could see like maybe the goaltending not getting there, but I personally don't like to bet that way, where I'm like betting on, it's kind of like, it's like, oh, like, are the stars not going to align for this team? It's like, that's not how I bet. So I'm fading all of the futures pretty much universally in the league, because I just don't think there's an edge on much of it. I think that there might be a couple goal props I give a gander at, but like even those, it's kind of like one injury and you're screwed, and like you can't really predict that. Like it's hard to model for like, oh, what's this player's potential injury? It's like no one really knows. So overall, I'm not betting them personally. I think the odds of them hitting 77.5 are about what Vegas has it. I think that's the coin flip. I think that their odds to make the playoffs are, I would argue, probably worse than that, like plus 600. Like there's a massive vig in there for Vegas, and that's just like why I don't like it. Like 300 points of variation. No, thank you. They're just, it's like you're essentially like you would. I think you'd need Comrie to legitimately be one of the top 5 goalies in the league for them to have a chance. And like the odds of that happening, I just don't think are there. So no, I'm not betting it, but I do think there's a lot of, and like we kind of made the case against other teams. Like I think there is a case against a lot of teams. Like I'm personally not that high in Detroit. I don't think Detroit's really that good. Like they have, I think, a very equal team to the Sabres, only they have more like minorly better depth pieces, but no real backing. I mean, they have Sider and they have a crater on defense. I mean, it's the same with Ottawa. It's like they have Shabbat and a crater on defense. And I just don't think it matters. Like Husso is better than what they had, but not by a ton. Like he really benefited from St. Louis being a lot better just as an entire team defensively, not just on their point. The same can be said with Cam Talbot in Minnesota. I don't think that's even difficult to say. That's obvious. But I just don't see any avenue where we're better than Tampa yet, even though they're going to start to decline. Toronto is probably right up there with Florida for the best. And I think Boston got better, sadly, which is tough, but it's like, unless if the age bug really just absolutely crushes them, I think that they're better. So yeah, I'm almost hoping that the Sabres really like have the growing pains that should happen, and we end up closer to where I think projections will have them, which we have. I think on Puck Luck we haven't met yet 26 in the league. I think that's probably more than likely where they're going to end up, with the like upside of them getting to like the 18 range. It's like, I don't know. Again, they get to the 18th best team in the league, and you're like thinking there was a chance, but I bet they're realistically out of it by March again, which is going to suck. But I think that we're going to see a ton of really, really fun, cool things from a lot of really good young players, including, I mean, the prospect pool, even that isn't up in, Rochester or Buffalo. We're going to see Noah Austin, who's on the first line in the SHL, and start to that's where he is right now. Like, we're going to see these young players, and I think we're really going to start to put the wheels in motion for having that type of team that can get there. Can we get one more big piece in this next draft? Can we finally put all of the naysayers aside? Can we get Devin Levi up here and ready to go and be that starting goalie, that Connor Hellebuck type of guy that I think he could be? Like, that's what it's all about. So it does suck that we have to go through another year, but I'm sticking through it with the Sabres. I mean, I haven't left yet.
Yeah, that's good. One thing to mention about the Sabres before we finish off the show, they usually get off to pretty good starts. I've noticed, especially the last few years. So betting wise, you may want to look at them to start the season. They've started off well in the recent past. So that would be.
I mean, yeah, I think to that point, it's just more of young teams generally do start well because the reason teams fade that are younger is because they're not used to 82 grueling games against grown men. So that's kind of like the theory behind any younger team starting better, and like new coaches also just adding a new element that other teams can't prepare for, which isn't the case this year for the Sabres. But I just do think that like with how many new pieces, it's hard to plan against a new team. So I think that there's like realistic factors feeding into that. But yeah, no, it's I think early on too. I'm echoing what you're saying, but I do think there's actually like some pretty good data behind it. It's not just like Sabres are good to start the year. Isn't that random? It's like, no, it actually makes sense, I think.
Yeah.
It could be the time to bet on them. You're right. Is October, November, December
Yeah.
before the wear and tear and the injuries mount.
Yeah, it's
and look, as much as Samuelson and Power, I don't mind. Dahlin's used to the 82 game NHL grind now, so I'm not as worried as much with him. But Samuelson and Power, especially, you're going to be asked to play among the most minutes of any Sabre blue liner this year. You're going up against number one lines of the other team. You're playing in all situations. You're playing against pros that have been here for years. It's a new experience for you. As good as you might be, that does add up on the body. It adds up on you mentally as well. Can you handle it for a full 82 game season? Those two in particular. It's a big time question.
I mean, we saw Quinn come up for like a week and then get hurt and then I think he either got staph infection. He got something weird too. It's like same with Krebs. I mean, he got banged up, I know, off the start of his career. It's like these players are 18. They're not developed enough to take on some of these guys. And like, it's just like, that's the way it goes. So, it's really hard for me to like make the bullish case on the Sabres. Like you would need perfection from this team up and down the ice for them to get there, just because there isn't a McDavid, there isn't even an Eichel anymore, which is obviously a tier below. It's like there's none of that to like propel us and continue. Like every game, there's not one guy to count on, unless it's Tage Thompson to repeat, which I think is a little bit crazy to think, but he's the only goal prop you can bet on right now at like 31.5, and it's like, yeah, I don't know, man. If your best goal scorer scores 31, it's like, yikes, you did not get there.
Yeah, for sure.
And I will point out, through the 82 games, Sabres will probably be dogs in 65 to 70 of them, roughly. There's going to be good spots.
That's why they were profitable last year with a 32-50 record. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They were up there with Carolina. They were sixth in terms of profitable teams last year, and they were dogs most of the time. So just finding your right spots, because hey, I mean, I'll take them a bunch of times this year as big dogs just to have big dog tickets. But this will be a team that at the end of the year could win 40 games and be profitable,
right?
Easily. And they could easily win 40 games and be the most profitable team this year just because they're dogs a lot. So this Buffalo team will be profitable this year as long as even if they have a 30-win season, they could still be profitable. So pick your right spots with them as dogs, and that'll be, especially on the road. They were a lot more profitable on the road last year.
Nick, if you rewind,
he already did it.
Yeah, he said it.
I never fail with Jeff Skinner to do it in that Simpsons voice. Yeah, Skinner. Yeah, exactly.
There you go. And that's a perfect way to end off the show. This is the Sabre Show. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll be doing the Detroit show tomorrow. And then we may, I'm not sure how the rest will go. We may record some. I might record a couple tonight and just post them to finish off the hockey preview shows. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the content, smash the like button. We appreciate all the support. Ian, you'll have Ice Guys news coming soon. So make sure to follow Ian at Bobano and the Ice Guys as well for Ice Guys information coming soon. Yep. But everyone, have a good one. Thanks for watching.